Good evening. Like many of you, I woke up this morning angry and heartbroken. This has been a maddening week. Tony McDade, a Black trans man, was killed by law enforcement in Tallahassee, Florida. The FBI opened an investigation into how Breonna Taylor, an African-American woman, was murdered by police in her own home in Louisville, Kentucky. As we know too well, George Floyd, an African-American man, was murdered in plain daylight by police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The assault on our African-American communities, LGBTQ and straight and cisgender alike, feels too much to bear. This weekend, communities across Illinois, in Chicago, Springfield, Bloomington Normal, Peoria, Champaign, Urbana, the Metro East, and so many other places rose up in anger at this injustice. The pain so many of us are carrying right now is so heavy. In light of this, I wanted to reach out from my home this evening to speak with you. First, my 500,000 LGBTQ brothers and sisters and siblings in Illinois, I love you all. I hope in this time of tragedy and trauma, you are safe tonight. 50 years and 11 months ago, LGBTQ patrons at the Stonewall Inn in New York took a historic step and rose up against police brutality. Led by people of color, by trans women of color in particular, their rage fueled a protest that lasted days. We commemorate this historic protest every year with Pride Month. Now, I know Pride today is marked by parades and parties in most years and glitzy corporate marketing campaigns, but at its core, Pride is a police protest. Today, we can rest assured in our marriages. We hold down jobs where we can't be fired for whom we love. We can eat at restaurants and stay in hotels without fear of being kicked out simply because of who we are. The rights we hold dear today are due in part because of a police protest. It is therefore our duty as an LGBTQ community to honor those from historically marginalized communities who continue to push back against the police injustices they experience. It is our duty to stand with our LGBTQ African-American siblings and demand better from our police. How you do that is up to you. You may join a protest. You may amplify the voices of those who engage in or lead these protests. You may donate to groups in this fight. Earlier today, Equality Illinois donated to the Chicago Community Bond Fund, www.chicagobond.org. This fund hopes to pay bond for everyone arrested at the Chicago protests this weekend. Some of you may be resistant. You see the violence and the destruction of property, and you're reluctant to weigh in. I just want to remind you the pain right now is real and it runs deep, just as the pain was real and ran deep at Stonewall 51 years ago. No matter what our elementary textbooks try to tell us, protest is messy. So I will borrow the words of the activist DeRay McKesson, you don't have to condone it to understand it. You wonder what you would have done at Stonewall 51 years ago? Look at what you're doing now. Support the protest in whatever way aligns with your values, but you must support the protest. We honor our history and those who fought for us by paying it forward, by standing up the way they would have. Second, for police. I want to begin by reminding you that in times like this, your job is to facilitate peaceful protest, not quash it. Your job is to protect protesters, not add to their harms. Just as protest is the lifeblood of the LGBTQ community's equal rights, so protest is the foundation of our nation's freedoms. Boston Tea Party, Nat Turner's insurrection, John Brown, the civil rights activists of the 1960s, our country was born in and raised by protest. You will be met with rage and disrespect. That is protest. That rage must be expressed and heard and felt. As journalist Krista Tippett says, anger is what pain looks like in public. For our collective pain to be processed, it must be experienced. You must bear it. Our history is littered with the shameful acts of those in power who responded to protests with increased violence. Don't join their ranks. Beyond the protests of this weekend, we need to have a broader conversation with you, our police. The continued assault on and murder of our African American brothers, sisters, and siblings must stop. Some in our community demand a complete overhaul of policing in this country. Others want to see the faithful implementation of consent decrees or the adoption of policy platforms like those developed by Campaign Zero. No matter what is done, we must see an immediate and dramatic culture shift in our police departments. And this culture shift must honor and center the communities most harmed by unjust police practices, primarily the African American communities, including the queer and trans African American communities in our state. Personally, I long for a day where our police are scholars of the history of systemic racism and injustice and act to counter that history in every interaction. Where our police are intimately familiar with their own biases, baked into them by the shameful parts of our past, and quash those instincts. Where our police consistently greet the communities they serve with humility and respect. Where our police de-escalate every time they meet anger and hate and fear. Where our police face down the racists and tyrants among them, those who many call bad apples, and rid their ranks of this cancer. There is no room for ambivalence here. Dramatic change must happen now. I know you leave your homes and loved ones every day and take on a job that is dangerous. And for that, I am grateful. I do not come from a police family, but I do come from a military family. And I know the sacrifice you and your families go through when you walk out the door every morning. It is not easy, but change is needed, and it is needed now. Finally, to our broader Illinois community, 12 million strong, what I'm about to say is hardest to say and hardest to accept. As Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches us, in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. The most violent police do not operate independent of our society. They are extensions of us. The criminal justice system is designed to protect the most powerful identities within us. It is meant to first protect whiteness, straightness, ableness. It is first meant to benefit the cisgender, the English-speaking, the native-born, the middle and upper classes. Some of us have multiple of those identities. Few have all of them. We must also look more broadly and recognize all the systems which seek to benefit these identities. Our urban planning, our housing policy, our economic development, our education, our environmental regulations, and so many more. In order to move forward, we have to acknowledge that some of our identities are the beneficiaries of the injustices perpetuated by these systems. We must be willing to sacrifice some of the narrow benefits these unjust systems bestow upon us in order to gain the broader benefit of living in a more equal society. I don't suggest this is easy. I don't have clear answers for each of you. Certainly at Equality Illinois, we know this is hard and complex work. We don't have all the answers. But I do know we have to be willing to reevaluate how we are taxed, how our schools are run, how our property is protected, who we allow to build and where, who we allow to pollute and where, what a fair income is, and who deserves it. The road ahead of us is long and difficult. And there are no policy panaceas, no quick fixes to the problems we have inherited. It will involve narrow sacrifices by many of us to reap the benefits of this broad justice. On a personal note, in my faith tradition, today we celebrate Pentecost. We remember that this is the day God sent down his Spirit to blaze out as a fire throughout the world. And the world does seem to be on fire in a wholly different way than I had hoped today. Our pain is the fuel. The injustices which plague us are the kindling. I believe, though, that our greatness as a state is more powerful than our pain and stronger than our sins. I love our LGBTQ community, diverse, dynamic, and resilient. And I love our Illinois, the state that gave our country Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama, the state that helped fuel both the labor movement and the women's suffrage movement, the state that so often reminds the rest of our country of what our best can look like. So today, brothers, sisters, and siblings, rest up. Tend to your wounds tonight and care for each other. Tomorrow we must come together, fueled by our anger and energized by our hope to build a better future. From my home to yours, from my family to yours. Good night. Be safe.